Active labor market policies, broadly speaking, can be made even more effective. They are needed. They have to be set up and tested in good times so that whenever we have a bad time like we did now, and we may have them in the future, they're ready to work. Unemployment is still high as we exit slowly from the recession, and in addition, long-term unemployment has increased. However, there are other signs which are worth mentioning. For instance, older workers have managed pretty well to remain in the labor force, also because of wealth reductions that they have to compensate with longer work hours. This will happen at different speeds across European countries because of different institutional conditions in labor markets. For instance, in some countries like Germany, the employment situation is definitely much more positive than in other countries which have suffered from not so well functioning labor markets before the crisis. I'm thinking about countries where, for instance, housing booms were at the root of the crisis, like Spain. The case of Germany is particularly relevant for its effectiveness. They have faced the demand in working hours not by laying off people but by reducing average working hours. So people have remained in the workforce, and now they're able to increase their working hours with benefits for the whole employment situation. The distance between the permanent and temporary segments of the labor market should be reduced in a number of ways. Also that reducing hours as a short-term measure to cope with unemployment shocks rather than laying off is effective. Of course, this requires in the meantime to have instruments such as training schemes to be effective, and you need to have the right infrastructure in place. If your macroeconomic performance and management has been effective before the crisis, in the crisis you will have less of a financing constraints to activate measures to deal with unemployment. We have to consider more seriously short-term schemes to provide short-term support for employment when there is a severe recession or a demand fall, as we have seen recently. Of course, these have to be done effectively, taking into account both the budget constraint and the way to target those resources in ways that are effective. If one has to raise taxes, which is the case in many countries given the need for fiscal consolidation, one should look at those sources of revenue which are least harmful to growth. So I would say tax labor less, tax carbon more. Employment protection has been useful given the depth of the recession. Of course, it could be argued that strong employment protection mechanisms have a negative impact when hiring takes place. There are ways to deal with employment protection that increase the flexibility both in hiring and in firing in ways that are beneficial to the overall employment situation.